afternoon, boys and girls. I want everyone to go ahead and take out just a random scratch sheet of paper and hold it up with both hands for me, just like this. Okay, so while I'm holding it, what do we think is gonna happen if I were to pull my hands down at the same time on this piece of paper? Can someone raise their hand and tell me what they think will happen? That's right, the paper is gonna rip. So thumbs up or down if you agree or disagree with the student that the paper is gonna rip. All right, everyone has thumbs up. All right, so everyone on the count of 3, we're gonna take our hands and we're gonna pull down and see what happens to our piece of paper. All right, 1, 2, 3. Yep, so our paper has ripped in half. So when we just ripped our piece of paper in half, did this change anything about the makeup of our paper, or is it still a piece of paper? That's right, it's still just a piece of paper. So going back to what we've talked about with physical and chemical changes, can someone please explain to me the difference in a physical and a chemical change? Yes, so a physical change is just going to change the form of a substance. It's not going to change anything about the makeup of it. So it's just going to alter how it's formed, shaped, or it's just going to be manipulated in a different way. But a chemical change is going to change the complete makeup of the substance itself. So the substance will become an entirely new, different substance after it's gone through a chemical change. All right, so can someone raise their hand and tell me whether you think ripping this piece of paper was a chemical or a physical change? Okay, so they think it was a physical change. So thumbs up or thumbs down if you agree or disagree if the ripping of a paper was a physical change. All right, yeah, thumbs up. So can you explain to me why this was a physical change and not a chemical change? Yes, because the paper did not change itself, it just changed the form. We just manipulated it into a different way. All right, so now we're going to explore some different ways on how we can carry out investigations of physical changes by either manipulating, separating, or mixing our dry and liquid materials. Okay, so now we're going to move into the explore phase of our lesson, and each student is going to have their own graphic organizer to complete while they're going through the explore phase at each different station. And so this is just going to help them keep track of their ideas and their thinking when they're working with their partners. So for the first station, we're going to complete as a class together, and this is going to be station 1. Okay, so the materials for this station, we just have a cup, we have water, and then we have some salt. And each material is going to be labeled for all the students to be able to see, and this is going to be a language support given to them while they're going through the different stations. So for station number 1, we're going to take our water and we're just going to pour it into our glass. And so at this point, all the students are going to be watching along as the teacher is demonstrating. Okay, so now everyone, I'm going to take my salt and I'm just going to pour some salt into my water. And so everyone, you can see how the salt is going to mix in with the water, and we can still see the difference in we have the water, and then at the bottom we can see our salt if you're up close. Okay, so can someone explain to me what we just did here in this experiment here? Yes, so we just mixed our water and then we mixed our salt. So we had our liquid material and then we had our dry material, and we mixed them together in a mixture. So in a mixture, this is just going to be mixing 2 different substances together, right? And so we did not change the makeup of either one of these. We still have our water and we still have our salt at the bottom. So all the students, you can see this here. And so what students are going to do on your graphic organizer here, you have 2 sections that you're going to write in. And so our investigation and our description of the activity, we're going to write in that we mixed salt and water together. And then the students, you're going to have to explain why this is an example of a physical change. So students, can someone tell me why this is a physical change and this is not a chemical change? Yes, that's right. So the makeup of the salt and the water did not change. We still have our same substances, we just mixed them together. And we could even separate these back out if we wanted to. So you're going to write in why it's an example of a physical change. And so this demonstration we did together. And so now students, you're going to move in and do the next 4 stations with your group members. And I will demonstrate for everyone what this will look like, what students will go through and do together. Okay. So while you're working with your group members, you're just going to have conversations with each other, and remember to just explain why everything is going to be a physical change, and you're just going to give that description of what you did. Okay. So now for our station number 2, students are going to go through and they're going to have a second glass set up, and then there's going to be water, and then they're going to have some oil here as well. And so all the materials will be labeled for them at the bottom to see. And so now students are going to take their water and just pour a little bit in. So one student could pour in their water, the other student could pour in the oil here. And so we're going to be mixing 2 different liquid materials at this station. Okay, so we can see here that we still have our water at the bottom, and then we have our oil at the top. So we can see how we still have our 2 different materials. And the materials did not change. There's still water and it's still oil. Nothing about it changed. We just mixed them and changed the form. So students on their graphic organizer, they're going to write a description of what they just did, how they mixed the oil and the water together. And then they're going to explain why this is a physical change and not a chemical change. So students should be able to understand that the water and the oil did not change in the mixture. We just mixed them together, and it just, the 2 stayed the same here. So now station 3. So students are going to be given a bowl of trail mix, and so there's going to be different items in the trail mix. We have raisins, M&Ms, peanuts, and we have some almonds as well. And so students are going to work together with their partners, and they're going to be separating these dry mixtures. So they can take out all of their raisins, just like this. And then all of their raisins can be put into a separate group by themselves. So they're separating out their raisins. They can separate out the M&Ms, separate the almonds, and then separate out the peanuts last. Okay, so now as you can see, students should have 4 different groups of materials. They were once mixed together in a bowl, and then all the students did were separate them out into different groups. So we just changed the form of each substance, but it's still, each substance is the same. So we still have peanuts here, we still have almonds, and we still have M&Ms and our raisins. So nothing about it changed, we just separated our mixtures apart from each other. So the students will fill out on their graphic organizer a description of the activity that they just did, and then they're going to write out and explain how this is an example of a physical change and not a chemical change. Okay. Now station 4, students are going to be given an empty bowl like this, and then they're going to be given some gummies to the side, and then they're going to be given some peanuts to the other side. And so here, the students are going to mix the 2 substances together. So these are 2 dry substances, so they're just going to mix their gummies in with their peanuts, and they can just kind of mix them around together, just like this. And so after students have kind of played around with this and mixed them together, they can even mix them around in the bowl even more. So students have seen that they've just taken two different materials and mixed them in a bowl together. So they're mixing two dry objects. So nothing about the two substances changed. We still have our gummy and we still have our peanuts, and we just mix them together. And so students will write the description of the activity on their graphic organizer and then explain how this mixture is a physical change. And then at the last station, students are just going to be given various slips of paper. So they're going to be given at least two. And then there's also going to be a pair of scissors there that students can use as well. So students at this station are going to figure out two different ways that they can manipulate these dry materials and make it a physical change. So for the first way, students could take a pair of scissors and they could just cut as so. Cut off random pieces just like this. And then students could also show just by crumbling up a piece of paper. That's another way to manipulate it. Or students could rip the piece of paper, tear off small pieces. However way, they can just show that they're manipulating the piece of paper. So students are going to write out the description of how they manipulated their pieces of paper, and then they're going to explain why it's a physical change and not a chemical change. So now, students, you've gone through all of your different stations and you should have your graphic organizer completed. So now we're just going to go through and discuss a little bit more and explain some of our answers as a whole group. Okay, so everyone should have their graphic organizer filled out with their partner. And so now we're just going to kind of talk about what we noticed in our investigations as a whole class and just kind of explain a little more about what we saw. Can someone tell me, based on what you observed in each station, what remained the same throughout each part? Yes, so no new substance was formed in any of the stations, so that remained the same. So we can determine that each of the stations, we did a physical change instead of a chemical change. So good. Okay. Then what are some other ways that we can manipulate objects to create a physical change? That's right. So we can manipulate objects by cutting them, we can rip them, separate them into groups, mix them together, and they don't have to be just dry materials. They can also be liquid, or they can be liquid and dry together. So there's lots of different ways that we can manipulate various objects to give us a physical change. Okay, so now let's just kind of go over some of the key terms that we've noticed in our lesson today. So can someone please give me one key term that we've talked about throughout the lesson? Yes, so physical change, good. So a physical change is something that, it's a change that alters the form of a substance. So no new substance is going to be formed during a physical change, just like we saw throughout all of our stations. We didn't create any new substances, we just altered the form of them. Okay, so another one of our key terms is a chemical change. So can someone give me the definition of a chemical change that we discussed earlier? Yes, so a chemical change is going to be a change that is going to alter the chemical makeup of a substance. So we're going to be creating a new substance when we have a physical change. Can someone give me an example, like a real example of a physical change, and then I want someone else to give me an example of a chemical change? Yeah, so a physical change can be just cutting a piece of paper. So we're not changing the piece of paper at all, we're just cutting it and altering the form of it. Okay, so can someone give me an example of a chemical change now? Yes, so an example of a chemical change could be someone burning a piece of paper. So when we burn the paper, it's going to make the paper turn into ash. So that's going to completely change the chemical makeup of that piece of paper. It's not going to be able to go back to being a piece of paper because it's turned into ash now. So great, two examples. And then the last key term that we need to focus on is mixture. So we had lots of mixtures today of dry and liquid materials. And so a mixture is just combining two substances together physically. So in a mixture, we're not creating a chemical change there. It's all going to be physical changes. Okay? And so now on the back side of your graphic organizer, I want you to go and draw a picture of a physical change happening. So you can draw your picture and make little notes beside it if you need to help further explain. So go ahead and draw on the back of your graphic organizer a physical change, And then I want you to discuss with your group members that you participated in with the stations, just kind of discuss your drawings with each other. So the teacher's going to give them a few minutes to kind of go through and draw their pictures, and then we're going to discuss as a whole class again. Okay, so can someone share what they drew for their physical change? Okay, great. So this is the example we're going to use. And so they drew, this is going to be like a graham cracker, like a whole graham cracker. And so their example, they broke off the graham cracker into the 4 individual pieces. And so they're just breaking them off, and they've shown it here. So we went from the whole graham cracker to now breaking off into individual pieces. So great, that is a great example of a physical change. So can someone else explain how this is a physical change? Yes, because they're just manipulating the form of the original graham cracker. They're not actually changing it into a new substance or anything like that. So we're just altering the form of it. So we've seen that throughout all of our stations today. We just manipulated our dry and liquid materials by either separating, mixing, or combining different objects together. So we saw that throughout our whole lesson in the activities we've done today. So great job, everyone.